Following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
Texas to Houston, right?
No. Don't go to Houston.
I am Joe Martek. This is the Team Martek Hour. Actually, it's the Dan and Joe show.
There's nobody else who's a no show?
Which is, yeah.
Everyone else.
We almost everybody else never shows, but we do have on occasion we get a show, and we have a guest attorney. I call him a kind of an ex-attorney because he's a retired prosecuting attorney from...
Once an attorney, it's like a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Once an attorney, always an attorney.
Is that true, you think?
I think so.
Yeah, but don't you have to keep getting certified in order to keep your...
Well, if you're going to practice, yes. But if you are if you're non-practicing, the title stays usually.
You're just... You get to have that JD behind your name?
In my case, calling me Alan is fine.
You don't want us to call you Dr. Allen.
No.
Dr. Allen.
No.
Yeah. We can't. Can I just call you Alan JD?
You can call me whatever you want, Joe.
Oh, wait a minute.
Whoa, wait a minute.
This is a public radio station.
This station
however.
is not like we go down to CNO. We got to be careful what we say, right?
We'd like for you to be careful here, too.
Got to be careful here, too. I get lectures all the time.
Don't mention CNO.
What's that? CNO what?
He does every show.
Not every show.
Almost.
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 Every's a big word.
So in other words, you're doing a show later on this afternoon on another radio
this
station.
over there.
I do.
Do you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And do they get all freaked out like I do?
No.
They could care less.
They go, who?
Yeah,
I
mean,
please stop.
public, non-profit radio, they don't pay attention to
There's profit
See,
everywhere.
radio stations like to think that they're the only radio station out there.
Is that right?
Yes, we are. It's
only a station out there where?
In
Fort Pierce.
in
Yeah.
listener land.
In listener land.
Yeah.
All I know is that we managed to survive the hurricane just fine, thank you, Lord. I didn't lose power. My boat didn't get hurt.
You're lucky. Some
Dan
people
lost
lost
power
power.
for
A
how
lot
long?
of boats got hurt. So
Oh, boy.
there's a lot of misery out there.
There's a boat laying on its side and the trailer on its side.
Yeah.
In what used to be that Causeway trailer
Yeah,
park there
yeah.
in Fort Pierce, it's now they're turning it into a
That's
marina.
called Lake Fort Pierce.
No, it's all dry. We got rid of all the water. There was no water, but there's mess.
All I
There's
know
mess.
is the keys, wait till they,
And I have no power.
the keys are it's,
Heartbreaking.
oh, jeez, I'm telling you what,
Heartbreaking.
when you look at the total devastation, it's just a tiny bit of encouragement, but not that the news media is not always effective, but, people standing in puddles making a big deal out of the water damage, that always gets me
It's
excited.
perspective. It's what I perceive to be my misery is what I dwell on. I dwell on yours unless I have a different mindset, and not everybody has that mindset.
See,
Well,
I'd love to go to the Keys. You love to go to the Keys.
Oh, yeah.
I was always retiring someplace warmer than here.
Yeah.
That was the Keys.
Well, you can still
you
go.
could probably get
So
good deals now.
I used to always go, I love the Keys janky. Think they're janky today?
All I know is that
Thank
They're
you today.
pretty janky.
they had key deers roaming US 1 down in Big Pine. And
Okay, I heard they all got killed.
Well, they didn't all because they had pictures of them roaming around.
Okay, well.
So they didn't all get killed.
If you have any questions, 340-1590, that's our
Very
phone number.
He's reeling us back in.
He's reeling us back in.
back in.
So back in '04, Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, Joe Martek, financial advisor, decided to start doing radio shows for a few weeks or a month or three.
It's added up.
And all of a sudden, boy, did we get old, Dan,
Hey, what can I say? I'm still here.
You're still-
I'm on the green side of the grass. I'm doing all right.
So we started doing the radio shows, and the concept was simple. I've got a lot of clients. Dan has a lot of clients. Greg was working on getting a lot of clients.
He's still getting them.
And he's still getting them. But what happened is none of us knew answers to everything. And in my not too humble opinion, if you're a credible professional, you align yourself with other credible professionals to help your clients. So constantly after Hurricane Andrew hit, one of the biggest subjects going was homeowners insurance and or business insurance.
I suspect it'll get that way again for a while.
I think so, because all of a sudden some of the captive companies started to non-renew or tremendously escalate their premiums.
Well, the underwriting for the last, say, 2 to 3 years has been a little bit more generous to locations and what they're requiring. So I have a feeling you might start seeing some of the underwriting tighten up a little bit.
Well, and usually, Dan, that's what happens. It's the pendulum swings, right? It gets easy,
Absolutely.
It gets hard, it gets easy, it gets
But
hard.
I will say this, Joe. I do have a couple of companies that we did not have before who are offering non-federal flood insurance.
Wonderful.
Now, they only offer it at renewal. So what am going to instruct my staff to do is about a month before these renewals start coming out, let's say we'll start working on the October renewals now, we're going to find out which of these companies offer that flood endorsement. Most of the people chose not to get it before.
Right.
They may choose to get it now, but you can't get it midterm. You can get it through the company only at renewal. Now, you can get it through the federal government, but it's a 30-day wait.
Unless you're buying a
new
house and closing now.
Absolutely.
Then you can get it, right?
You can get it then.
Yep. 340-1590, 340-1590. So then, as the turns of event occurred, we added Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, because this last recession we all went through in real estate caused new words to come up. Deedbacks were never new and foreclosures weren't new, but short sales all of a sudden became a whole new topic.
Well, it was something that was there. We just didn't have to deal with it.
Yep. And then there was all of this media coverage saying there was no mortgage financing available. So Mike Paulus, mortgage broker, who's about 25 or 7 years in business, came in and said, wait a minute, that's not true. Certain programs have always been there. The difference was during or before the recession, the underwriting got what you call extremely loose.
Can you fog a mirror?
Fog a mirror, you could get a loan. Then all of a sudden they went back to what is considered, or I would consider, normal underwriting, which is you've got to prove you can make the payment.
And I still feel, Joe, that as a taxpayer, that's the way it should be, because as things ebb and flow in the mortgage business and the banking business, if things are done too recklessly,
Right.
you and I and Alan, as taxpayers,
Yeah.
have ended up paying for all those mistakes.
I was in 1976 when I first moved to Florida. I was an officer for a division at Chase Manhattan Bank, and back after the 74, 75 recessions, the banks basically owned the state of Florida because they then financed all of these properties, these projects, and they would build 200, 300, 400 units and not sell one. And they would build it out, or almost out. So then all of a sudden, the banks now own all these properties. And I remember standing on the beach in Clearwater, Florida, looking at this high-rise building on the Gulf of Mexico.
You think it's still there?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting building. And I was talking to the banker at the time, and I says, boy, you guys will never make this mistake again. And he said, don't count on it. He said,
What it is lenders and bankers ebb and flow with what the Fed lets them do.
Yeah.
All right. If you're in business and you get in real trouble, chances are you've learned something and won't do it again.
Chances are, but
Okay.
but that's not real business.
I understand.
So he said, here's what happened. All of the guys that made these bad loans before either got fired, and this was my favorite part of the, or promoted.
Yes.
And
to the level of incompetence.
Yeah, here we go with the Peter principle
Yes,
again,
absolutely.
right? And he just said it will happen again, and of
And it
course,
has,
and it
it
has
has.
repeatedly, and it probably will still.
But it wouldn't happen again, Joseph, if you and I didn't have to bail them out. If they didn't have that golden parachute to
Yeah.
bail out on, which is called the taxpayer, I think they'd be a little more cognizant about what they do with leveraged money.
Well, every time we turn around and there's more legislation passed to control this kind of stuff, it creates new loopholes. And they have never figured out a way to stop greed. I mean,
Well, thieves are ingenious people. They will analyze things and say, this is the loophole we can use, so we're going to head down that road, and that's what happens.
And that's exactly what happens. 340-1590, 340-1590. So, of the group, Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, Joe Martek, financial advisor, are here. And again, with special guest star, retired prosecuting attorney Alan Love. I guess what Dan, when I look at what's going on in the insurance business, back to the feast or famine, like you said, probably underwriting will get a little tougher now after this.
It will probably get tougher in coastal regions. That's normally what happens. Now, we know from the last storm that went across the entire state of Florida, while the eye wall may have hit on the west coast, the major rainfall was here in Fort Pierce throughout the whole state. So I've always told people that Florida is basically about a 60, 65, 70 mile wide sandbar. That's what we are, and a big storm can cover it. And I was always mystified when the companies would say, well, we're going to treat the coastal counties differently. That's crazy, because they get just as many potential problems in the center of this state as we do here on the coast. We will take the brunt. We take the brunt of the storm, but they still get their fair share.
Well, wouldn't it be better than to just spread that risk and have like money coming in from the whole state than to
that's logic.
Really hit the people on the coast?
You got to be careful with logic.
When you see, let's say, in the newspaper, or you hear, hey, XYZ insurance company just took a 8% rate increase, and you go, well, that's not too bad. I can live with that. And then you get your renewal, and it's up 50%.
But that's the minimum, was the 8%.
No, what it is, that's bottom line.
Across the board.
Okay.
That means they can
it's an average.
No, they could take all that premium. Let's say they were making $100 million, and they got a 10% rate increase. They could take all that $10 million and put it in 2 or 3 counties.
Okay, so it's
Other
not,
people
so
got
other
no
people
increase.
no increase. Okay.
No increase.
Okay.
What they should say, it should be worded differently. It should be said, no more than X% for any one person. So if you got an 8% across the board, you say 8% rate increase. No one's premium will go up more than 15.
When they do that, though, are they trying to get those people to leave?
Yes and no. They prefer you to stay and pay.
Yeah, but what if you can't?
Then you go.
Then you
go.
go.
The problem is there may be nowhere to go, because what happens is, I don't use the word collusion, because there is none, but each insurance company knows what their competition's doing, because all rates are filed. All right, so
Public records.
If we can show where we've lost money, they're going to give us a rate increase. If they don't, we can increase your rates and not get a rate increase by simply removing discounts. Out of the goodness of the insurance company's heart, they give you a discount based on the characteristics of your home.
I always feel they're just bringing it back to normal, like discounts. It's like when they mark up something at the store to give you a discount to get
Is
you
it like
to come
a car
in.
dealer giving you a rebate?
Yeah.
Right.
It's
the
pack the price in right.
Yeah.
It's all worked in there. But I will tell you, I mean, I've seen new houses, rather expensive new houses, being insured at my office for $700-800.
Yeah.
That's probably going to see some rectification up the road based on what I've just seen.
Now, prior to us having a storm, I was thinking, did the Harvey storm, would that affect everyone?
It could. I mean,
However,
you
Dan,
have
come
to
on.
show.
What's Florida insurance? Come on.
Yeah, you have to show where you lost money here. And a lot of companies have become Florida-only
There you
Okay.
go.
So what I was thinking is we would get increases just to help them.
Not
recoup
on a
what they
Florida-only
lost back.
company.
Okay, now are they going to become Texas-only too?
They might.
They might. We Dan and I are a bit jaded, and me especially, because I'm not in the insurance business. Dan's got to be a little more watch his tongue.
Well, I think a lot of people are. I mean, it's a hard.
Well,
you got to have insurance, but it's hard to pay for something that you're really not planning on using.
Well, if you look back on history, what really happened was when Andrew hit, and we had many small companies go out of business. All right, the big rating companies, AM Best, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, came to the larger companies and said, look, we're going to downgrade you because you're overexposed in Florida. And they said, oh, no, don't do that. We'll figure out a way. And they got rid of hundreds of thousands of customers, and they created Florida-only companies. Now, I'm just going to tell you what I personally believe. If you're with a large company, let's say it's State Farm or Nationwide or Allstate of Florida, and they were to go bankrupt because of a major storm, I truly believe they are going, the home company is going to make them whole. That's what I'm hoping.
You're hoping, even though legally they don't have.
But they probably have reinsurance and other stuff to help protect them. But if they were to go under, they could, in theory, walk away.
What happened is years ago, of course, on the other hand, you have a state guarantee fund that backs up companies that are admitted companies, which now is the taxpayer again, which is another problem. But what Dan was alluding to, or I was, back under who is now our current Democratic senator in a state, they changed the insurance rules in Florida and allowed a company to be a state-only company.
I was surprised. Honestly, I was surprised when they allowed that to happen. But if you think about it and you follow the money trail, which we do here sometimes, many of our insurance commissioners, and they are supposed to be the advocate for the consumer, really. They're supposed to be your advocate. Many of our last few insurance commissioners sought higher office, and I felt they used it as a springboard. And there's a good chance they might have gotten some contributions from insurance companies for their campaign.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't keep up with that. But when certain things happen that I think are not always in the best interest of the consumer, and then I see that person who's in charge of that political career rise, it makes me feel unhappy.
Sure, and then once they reach that political status, then they can help out those companies.
The other side of the coin was that if we look historically at our insurance, quote, commissioners, can you name one that was ever in the insurance business? No, I thought you were grasping there for straws, and I was helping you, Dan.
I can't think of any. I mean, Gallagher was pretty close. He was doing a lot of testing for the state after he sought, the governor's office. I know Alex Sink sought to be governor, and we've had several people who used it as a good opportunity, but that doesn't necessarily mean they can't do a good job.
I didn't say they couldn't do a job.
Okay,
right.
If you surround yourself with professionals in any industry that you're sort of overseeing, and you're smart enough to know that you're not an expert on this, if you get good people, you can get steered in the right direction. The problem was there was a lot of political influence that I felt was sometimes not in the best interest of the majority of the consumers who buy insurance in Florida.
340-1590, 340-1590. So anybody wants to call and join into this and, throw out some words of wisdom or
Joe, the biggest thing I have seen coming into our office have been, hey, I'm missing a few shingles. Okay, so does that mean that your shingles have all lifted? I don't know.
I have a ripple in my roof.
So what I have been suggesting to people is, I'm going to give them the 800 number. I'm going to give them the website to put that claim in. Now, once they've done that, they're going to get a claim number. They can call back to our office. We'll log it in. Now, if you have a problem, let me know. That's my job. I will be your advocate. That's my job.
For people who are still sitting in the dark and may not know that they may have had a leak in a closet or something that they haven't found yet, they should, should they call and
I always say call.
Get a claim going?
Now, the flip side of that is, let's suppose you have a $100,000 home or $200,000 home, to make my example easy, with a 2% wind deductible. Well, that's $4,000 on a $200,000 home. If it's truly two shingles, maybe you'll be okay to get it fixed. Florida statute says if it's over a certain percentage destroyed, I think it's 25 or 30%, they have to get you a new roof. They can't just patch it. All right. So, and I have heard people say, well, the roof looks good, but the roofer told me all the shingles lifted, so the integrity of the shingle is gone. And from my training, I can't tell from the road. So have somebody look at it if you're in doubt.
There was another thing that happened, not necessarily in this storm, but I think back in Francis and Jean, some of the roof vents, the ceiling attic vents, the wind, even though they're bent in such a way not to let water in. That wind blew water into
Yes.
these vents and caused leaks
The ridge vent.
We got a lot of water that way.
that
Yeah.
were not
Yeah.
really
It,
a
it
roofing.
trickled through the attic and it came through our
Yeah.
ceiling
Yeah.
smoke detectors.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it dripped right on the carpet and
Yeah.
We ended up putting I had a welder come out and weld the piece under it. I know it's all after the fact,
Yeah.
advice.
yeah. And you don't think of that either until after you get the
And
water.
then what I did is they had those little, I call them noodles, or like long, skinny things that kids
For the
use
pool,
for
yeah.
the pools. I cut them to size and shove them right in there, and that kept anything else out,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
was good to go.
Yeah.
But that's
Did you see the saran wrappy stuff that they put around the pumps
I did,
at the
to
gas
hold-
station?
to
That would
hold
be
them.
good too around
Yes.
the roof vent.
Yes.
the key thing is you got to get up on the roof to do
Yeah,
that, and
yeah.
you know, and
And not everybody can do that.
you know what I like what Dan told me, because on my truck sitting in the yard, I figured I was going to be gone, during the storm, and it was going to hit us. So Dan said, hey, put a plastic bag over the tailpipe and get it so that
And
the
get
wa-
in and turn the motor off.
Well, then what? Of course, after the storm was over, I forgot, and of course I blew off the bag. But that's okay.
Well, that's yeah. It would,
But it didn't get water in. That's just the good news. So we really dodged the bullet.
Well, it's like I don't use sandbags around my house because I don't think we get that torrential a problem. I use mulch bags. And then I have all the mulch ready to go, and I feel a little more energy to put back out because I lost most of my mulch.
When is that energy going to show up?
Probably in about 2 months.
yeah, because you used it all preparing for the storm.
It's like
Yeah.
it was like 3 days
Yeah.
after work.
I know
every day.
everybody I know they were dead on their feet. They're just
Well, hey, let's
Working hard.
As the neighborhood goes, my shutters are off. That's the good news.
I don't have. I have all my accordions back, but the ones that I had to like manually put the wing nuts on and stuff, I have a few like that. They're going to be up for a little while.
Well, now they're kind of worried about Jose, kind of. But
yeah. I was just trying to get. I'm not hearing anything about it.
it's making this loop-de-loop.
Oh, little Jance's.
Yes.
What was it? Gene.
Gene.
Yeah, it's doing
dance.
the Gene dance.
Well,
and
you
then-
notice they were telling you all about these storms, and then when you could see that the panic was setting in, you didn't hear a word about Jose or the
Yeah.
other storms during Irma. It's like, don't tell anybody about that storm.
Get through this one first.
340-1590, 340-15.
But can that happen again? Seriously, we've already done that.
It could happen.
Stop that. I don't want to hear it.
Listen, this is Florida.
I would have lost money last time when the storm's gone. If
Yeah.
you'd have said, Dan, it's going to circle back around,
Yeah.
I would have
Yeah.
ponied up and said, how much you want to bet?
Well, Dan, as long as you've been alive in Florida, and before Gene, did we ever have
No.
one that did a loop-to-loop?
No.
Now all of a sudden, oh, you know what it is? That's Al Gore's fault.
That's right.
You know what happened?
warming,
Karma
right?
said you didn't have enough. Here's another one.
There's another one, right? we had to wait how many years to get a loop-de-loop storm, but hey,
But I tell you what, I am not even thinking about leaving Florida. I love the state.
No
I don't
kidding.
have any problems with it. I had more than enough time to get my home ready. Yes, it's hard to say, where's the rain going to go? I don't know.
Dan, would you also love to answer a question?
Depends on the question.
Okay, here's the question.
it's an attorney answer.
In this day and age, many people live together as partners or friends. They're not married. What happened?
Who might we be talking about here?
Ask me the question.
A friend?
What happens if somebody moves in with a homeowner and the homeowner has home insurance, contents insurance, and the friend, the partner, moves in and doesn't have renter's insurance because he or she is not paying rent?
Okay.
Will the contents insurance of the homeowner cover the contents of the partner?
Possibly.
Boy, is that an attorney
I'm thinking,
answer.
why tell the insurance company
Why
it's not
would
your
you say, hey,
stuff?
we're not? No, those are contents for the house, right?
So here's what I would.
Just because you got a woman that's not too bright willing to take your stuff in the house, and it's her stuff now.
the ideal way to solve that is to say the girlfriend or boyfriend who moved in has an insurable interest in their contents, which is in your house. Let me contact the underwriter and see if we can add them as an additional insured on the policy.
Nice. Additional insured.
That's how I would try to skin that. Now, if she's just the latest one who's going to be in there for 2 or 3 weeks till you kick her out, then no, let's not do that. But
Well, once you move your stuff in my house, it's my stuff.
That's my point.
That's exactly what I
That's
was
my
thinking.
point. Hey, listen, and if I don't want your stuff in my house, it's on the yard, out in the lawn.
Curb.
But look at how many people in the state of Florida who are widows or widowers who live together. How do they address that? Well, they should talk to their agent and show, I need to add them as an additional insured on my policy.
Well, Dan, expand on that a little bit. So let's just assume you and I are both living in a house and both of our wives kicked us out and we just decide we're going to share expenses, but you own the house. Now, liability insurance, right?
Yeah.
Now, there comes here without additional insured. If I'm all of a sudden having a party and you're gone and somebody falls down in your house and you're gone, you're not there, and I caused this problem because
You have a claim.
I left a banana peel.
I have a claim.
You have a claim.
But they're going to sue you too.
Yeah.
And so if I can name you as an additional insured on the policy, that will afford you some legal representation. And in the event that you're deemed negligent,
Could you sue him for having a party in your house while you were
possibly
away?
could.
You
I
could-
could.
in
I
America,
could
you
sue
can
him
sue
because I don't like
anybody.
him.
This
Wait,
is
you
Sue
anymore.
America. That's easy. But the key thing, additional insureds are constantly added to policies. I mean,
But the underwriter is going to traditionally ask me, Dan, what is their insurable interest?
exactly.
And I have to be able to show it. It's like I could not insure your car.
Right.
I don't have any interest in your car. All right. Now, if you were to say, hey, Dan, I heard your car is broke, you can use my car till you get a new car. You might be wise to put me on as a driver.
Exactly.
All right. Now, if it's going to be for a day or two, no.
But all of a sudden, if you've got that car for 6 months,
That's
the
different.
insurance company starts to look and say, hey, wait a minute,
That's
why
different.
didn't? Yeah,
Why-
I mean, insurable interest is
Yeah, your truck's in New York, but it's insured down here, but you live in New York 10 months out of the year, there's a problem here.
Yeah, right. 340-1590, 340-1590. So, Alan, just remember this. All your stuff is not yours. It's your girlfriend's.
Okay.
He has no stuff.
And I would
Dan.
say vice versa. She moved her stuff in your house. It's your stuff too.
Yeah.
Dan, if you add somebody like that to a policy, how does that affect the rate?
It shouldn't affect it at all on a property policy. It could affect it on an automobile policy if they're a bad driver.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, there's always the possibility. Listen, if you take that girlfriend, boyfriend, and turn them into a husband or wife, and they have bad driving record and terrible credit, it's going to affect you too.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, that's just the part of the deal.
Yeah, but it's additional insureds. I remember back many, many moons ago when I was in the business up in Michigan, as their interest may appear, additional insureds. And very often, lenders would say we need to add that clause in there, just to cover them also.
And sometimes, Joe, when we get requests that I think are too broad in scope and nature, I'll send it to the underwriter
Sure,
and say, can
but-
I add it with this verbiage?
Yeah.
And they'll say, yeah, or they'll say, no, we have to take this word out, see if they'll accept it.
There you go.
Because sometimes they ask for more than they really have a reasonable expectation to get.
340-1590, 340-1590. So other than that, we all survived the storm.
I did. We had power for, I don't know, a day and a half that was gone. But, we turned our AC down real cold. It stayed cold for, most of the day.
Nobody opened the fridge.
Nobody opened the fridge.
Yeah.
We had gotten all these Ziploc bags full of ice, made water, made
Yeah,
ice,
yeah.
put them in the freezer and the refrigerators. I didn't buy any ice or water.
Yeah,
I
right.
had what I needed.
I took big Rubbermaid containers and a couple days before the storm made big blocks of ice.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Lasted forever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I still have no power.
Well, you could take, milk jugs and
Yeah.
just cut them. When we did a lot of fishing, we could have, 20
the
milk
time.
jugs all the time. Just take them, and we don't buy ice. Now people got into this thing. If the water didn't come from a plastic bottle,
Yeah.
they couldn't drink it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Right.
got
Open
plenty
the
of
tap.
water. You got
Open the
plenty of water.
tap.
That's right.
Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590. And my daughter lives in St. Pete Beach on the intercoastal
Ooh.
side.
How they do?
Well, they had the reverse storm surge over there. It sucked out
Pushed
all
it out.
of the water.
Yeah.
You know, where they lived, it was like 6 to 8 feet across. They could almost walk across the
They
whole
said
thing.
people could see the bottom of Tampa Bay.
Like a
Yeah.
tsunami, like a pre-tsunami
It just
condition.
sucked it all right out, and it never did come back strong because then the winds subsided that were on the back side of the storm when it came back in.
Now, how about all the people that evacuated? All right, I didn't evacuate, and I knew a couple of people who were, and they left. They're still gone. They're
Yeah,
not coming
yeah,
back. I told Nancy during our pre-preparation thinking, I go, I'm not going to evacuate with millions of people.
Sure.
I don't want to
Well,
do
you had to
that.
weather the storm in your car on the road.
Run out of gas
Run out
on
of gas.
95.
Or the
yeah.
situation with the gas. Yeah, and people who were afraid who left with cars that couldn't make a trip where they were sitting, going 5 miles an hour, not even, and their cars broke down.
Yeah. I'm
So-
telling you what, it was when the 95 and the Turnpike were bumper to bumper. When they say evacuate Dade County with 1,200,000 or 300,000 people,
So where's the news coverage as to what happened to all these people?
I
I'd
don't
like
know.
to know, are
It's
people
not-
still
it's not
sitting
newsworthy.
tight, or-
It wasn't sensational enough.
Yeah, well, I'd like to know, how did we bring back all the millions we evacuated?
They're still coming.
340-1590, 340-1590, and we have a caller, Joseph. It's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good,
Good, Joe.
thanks.
Good. Yeah, you were talking about spouses and girlfriends and all that. When my late wife and I got married up in Jacksonville Beach, the justice of the peace said, now what's hers is hers and what's yours is hers.
That is absolutely right.
How come? We understand that.
Yeah.
and anything you may ever acquire will be hers.
Also hers.
Yeah.
Right. But now I'm all alone. So.
Well, but you don't sound too unhappy.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, you are.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, hey, look at.
If my wife were to die before me, I would be lost, Joseph. I depend on her for so
I know.
much.
That's what happened to me.
Well, listen. You can't, talking to me about wives is a bad subject because
Yes, but
I've
you have
been
a collection.
I've
You have
been
a
I've been
collection.
unbelievably
Collection.
unsuccessful at that. So, but
I mean, I got divorced up in Jersey years ago. I came down here and met Roxy, and she's 3 years younger than me, but she left me.
well, you thank God you got lucky and you had some good years, and
Absolutely.
and you're to be envied. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and I'm happy for you. I am absolutely in awe of everybody that stays married, and they have successful marriages. Even our producer stays married, but she doesn't talk
I've been
to her
married
husband
forever.
forever, right? But
I ain't going through it again. I'm sorry.
But like you just said, what's hers is hers, and what's yours is hers,
Also hers,
and
yeah.
that's how that's why her husband's afraid to leave.
Even the children, they're mine.
Yes,
Right.
Joe. Thanks for calling in, my man.
Okay, man. Take care.
340-1590, 340-1590. Well, I might as well talk about some money, because if you've been watching, of course I watched.
We're all spending a lot of money thanks to the storm.
I wonder how many hundreds of billions of dollars between
Unbelievable.
buying food, water, everything you're never going to eat in your life, all the carb snacks. Then you decide to, I better go. It's a Cat 5, so I'm going to spend $500 a day on
Yes.
food and lodging.
And hoarding gas and gas cans full of, and even just got to go get a generator. I mean, got to go get a chainsaw.
Well, you know what? Guess what? The Generac people were happy, and
Yeah.
Homelight or whoever it is happy. The chainsaw people, but you know what? I'm back to this, Dan, and I have this internal argument with myself, and then I talk to other people about it constantly, including Alan and you, about the condition of our stock market and the overall condition of our economy. Now, I think that the business community, their whole attitude today is very positive, hoping that the current administration is going to make certain things happen that make business more user-friendly and will create more good-paying jobs and more full employment and all of that in the future. So,
Well, some of the momentum, for lack of a better term, that I perceive coming out of the current administration has been put on hold for these weather catastrophes.
yeah.
There's just no other way I can explain it. Everything got put on hold, and I hope we can return and get that momentum going for some tax relief and some other things that are desperately needed. I truly don't want Obamacare to become the law of the land forever in my lifetime.
Right.
And it seems to be heading that way.
Well, that has me pretty agitated, the whole Obamacare thing, because the Republicans ran on it,
Yeah.
repeal, 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 and then when they got the opportunity and the president and the White House behind them, they don't have a plan.
Well, the problem
And
is
they didn't even repeal it.
Well, you got to remember that you had a disgraceful senator from Arizona who killed it. I don't know if it was out of spite or why he did it.
I think it's because he didn't win.
the other side of the coin was if you
Way
remember
back when.
if you remember
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi's statement is we have to pass
Was
this
it
so we can find out what's in it.
Was it a coherent statement?
Yeah, it was perfect.
Not really.
But the key thing that we're looking at is the current administration, the business community is hoping, I still think, somewhat optimistically, that we're going to have some things happen that will continue this momentum. And my biggest fear is when you have what's called a full stock market, which by everybody's estimation, the PE ratio is around 18.
Now, when you
going-
say PE,
I was gonna say
price
what
to
it-
earnings
that's
ratio.
price to earnings, so people have to understand that.
10 is considered a good number. Higher than 10 is considered a not good number. When it gets up around 20 or higher, we've oftentimes gone into a major correction, downturn, recession, etc. So right now, forward, meaning 6 months to 8 months out, the PE ratio is at 18. Currently, it's right at 20, maybe 22, depending on who you're talking to. So I have been reluctant to tell people to get into the broad market. Broad market means, hey, let's buy an S&P 500 index fund, or let's do the Dow, or let's do the NASDAQ, because now we're involved in 500 or 1,000 or 3,000 companies, and when the market does a major hit, it usually takes down a ton of those.
It will.
And what it may not take is all of them, but there are certain sectors that may be less vulnerable to a major correction. So before I finish this conversation, we have another caller.
Okay.
And it's Pat. You're Joe Martek. You're on the radio, Pat.
Okay, just wondering what the how do you justify what's going to be a totaled vehicle from flooding?
How do you justify it? As far
No. What is declared total? Is it up to the roof line, the seat line, the floor line?
I don't know if the depth of the water would be the determining factor, Pat. There's a good chance it's going to be the cost to repair the engine or the damages in the electrical system versus the value of the car, as with probably any other claim. If I had a client that was involved in a traditional auto accident that had a $4,000 valued automobile and it was going to cost $3,500 to fix it, they're probably going to total it out. I would imagine they'll probably use that same type of logic in determining totaling out flood damaged cars, because in many cases it's not just some damage to the block. It could be the whole electrical system and many other things as well, Pat.
Okay, so
Does that help any?
well, I still won't know what to look for other than I'm not. I don't have all the machinery it takes to figure out what the computer stuff in the cars are.
Hey,
Now,
well,
Pat, are you insured? Is the car insured?
No. I'm just saying if I was to go out and
If you were.
look for a new vehicle.
Now, here comes the question. What about, Dan, isn't it against the law, quote, to sell a car that's
Not
been
supposed to sell a flooded out car. Some people know and some people don't know. I'm also a car dealer.
So what is a flooded out car?
Car's been totaled out and deemed lost.
Okay.
So the insurance company would come in and say it's
But
totaled.
the problem is sometimes, Pat, is unscrupulous people will take cars to 2 or 3 states and try to watch that title and have that designation taken off that title. Sometimes they're successful and sometimes they're not. It's like, there are thieves and crooks in this whole world. So it's hard to protect ourselves from them sometimes.
Yeah. Car dealers and lawyers.
Well,
my son's a lawyer and I'm a car dealer, so I can
Careful.
I can tell you,
But,
that
Pat,
you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Here comes, my brother just bought a Altima that had severe damage and got repaired. And now that's on the record that there's severe damage.
Well, yeah, wouldn't the flood information be on a Carfax?
It should be a branded title. It's just like, let's say you were to go buy a car from Enterprise Rent-A-Car or any other fleet vehicle.
Right.
It's going to be a branded title. Those are legitimately done things to the title to make you as a consumer aware this is not an ordinary vehicle. And legitimate vehicles are done like that by legitimate dealers. And, we want the public to know what they're buying, because you should get a better value or a better buy on a car that's been used in that capacity.
Question is this: what if I have a car personally, and it gets flooded, but it doesn't show any damage?
It's going to smell like it's been in a flood.
Well, but I can clean that up.
No, I don't know.
You should see what Ford Motor Company did to me.
They smell funky when they get.
But either way, what I'm trying to say is, now there's not going to be a cloud on the title because it's.
Well,
yes and no. You just cleaned it up yourself.
I can tell you that in the last 2 or 3 months, I've had different states send me forms that have to be signed and notarized by people who owned a car that's now in their state, but that car was in an area that had flooded when they owned it.
In that area. Okay.
And they want documentation that it was not flooded.
Okay,
now, I'm not saying every state catches it. And we do try very, very hard to make sure that people are aware. But let's face it, there's going to be, probably millions of cars that are going to be subject to damage.
Are there, okay, let's say it just got, floorboards are wet, carpet's wet, just.
The biggest problem is if it's salt.
Can you tell?
If it's salt water, you need to get rid of that.
Yeah.
You could have damage to your brakes.
What do you look for? What do you look for if you're buying a car?
Look at, when I always bought a used car, I would take it down to, quote, a reputable mechanic, put it up on a lift.
Absolutely.
And just take a look.
Okay, yeah. Well, if it's, the underside would look pretty bad.
Well, that's
if it was in a flood.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Especially if it's salt water.
Yeah.
I mean, I dipped a back end of a truck or two into salt water with a
boat
boat trailer on it, and you should see what happens.
I know.
Well, that's the same thing with cars. When we see cars coming down from the Northeast who've been subject to salt from snow, when I go to an auction, I'm always getting up underneath that car looking for damage to the frame by
salt,
rust and all that salt. So,
hey, Pat, thanks. That was good observations.
What's the old saying? Caveat emptor: buyer beware.
Buyer beware. You got to. Hey, look at one of the perks of getting old is we've had the sharp stick in the eye a few times, and we learn by those things, and hopefully we don't continue to make those mistakes. And as my father used to say, which I never listened to, you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. You can learn from mine.
Now, my dad said mistakes are an accumulation of wisdom. All right? So the more mistakes you make, the wiser you get. And then he'd say, hopefully there's somebody else's mistakes and not yours. But that's all wisdom is an accumulation of mistakes.
Hey, Pat, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it.
You guys are sounding good today.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I have a follow-up question, Dan, on the subject. Let's say you have a $10,000 car and it's been totaled. Do most insurance policies, will it be the replacement value? Will you get $10,000 to put to a new car or another car?
Well, let's give you the lawyer answer.
Maybe.
That depends.
That
depends.
Depends
All
on
right,
your
so
endorsement.
let's say you have a car that's truly worth the actual cash value, not replacement cost, but the actual cash value is $10,000. And you have to remember that many people have what I call emotional attachment to their car. And sometimes they think it's worth more than it truly is. But if it's truly worth $10,000, that's what you should get. Now, let's say you have a deductible. You're going to have that deductible removed from the value. So if you have a $10,000 policy with a $500 deductible, you'll probably get $9,500.
Now, they have also, there's riders. We see the television commercials. You kind of have to read between the lines, which it says full replacement value. That's a rider you can add to a policy. It isn't necessarily actual cash value, but it could be replacement value.
Well, we have also what are called stated value policies. Okay, let's suppose I were to insure my old Corvette or my old Mustang or something like that, and I can show that it's worth $25,000, even though Kelley Blue Book says this is worth $4,500. I can do a stated value policy. I'm going to have to show the documentation and the appraisal by a bona fide appraiser
There you go.
that it's worth X dollars, and now they'll agree to insure it for that. But you pay a little extra.
Well, that's what they do with most boats. You do what's called a survey, which
Marine
is basically
survey.
appraisal, and they come up with a value. And very often, insurance companies, one will say, hey, we will only insure it up to the appraised value, the surveyed value.
Regardless of what you think it's
regardless of what you think it's worth. And then another one will say, hey, we're only going to insure it for what you paid for it.
worth. Yes.
So it depends on the company and you, the consumer, back to having keep your eyes open, knowing what's going on.
Because just like with cars, with some boats, the old Rybovich boats and certain boats, they have great value.
Boy, yeah. Well, Rybovich is like a magic name.
Yes.
They're classics. But 340-1590, 340-1590. I may get back into money here in a minute, but let's do this. We have another phone call. Don, it's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Yeah, you were talking about used cars and damage and whatnot several years ago, and it's been a while. I bought a car from a Chevrolet dealer in Fort Pierce, and I asked, for a, what is it?
Like a Carfax? A Carfax? Uh-huh.
Yeah. And they gave me one, and it showed that the car was good and whatnot. And I bought the vehicle, and I went to my church, and my friend at the church said, well, that's my cousin's truck. And his son
It's a
hit
small town.
a guardrail and tore the A-frame out. They repaired it. The insurance company, he told me, totaled it. It did not show that on the
Title.
Carfax?
and the Carfax they gave me, I got it from them. So I'm just trying to tell your customers, when you go to Carfax, you go to Carfax. Don't let them go because they did not show any of the damage. And when I asked the salesman, I said, has this been in an accident? He goes, not to our knowledge.
There you go.
That's the disclaimer.
That's the disclaimer.
Well, when I talked to my friend at the church, he said that they knew it was wrecked because they brought it in there wrecked.
Wow.
You know what happens is, and we're saying it too, it's you gotta, keep your eyes open, pay attention, do things, listen to an old guy that's been down around the block 40 times to help you guide you when you're a young person before you make a decision.
Don, there's another report that from the insurance side we use. It's called a clue report, and it traces the VIN number for insurance repairs.
See, and you have to do that in order to order parts.
That is
When you
correct.
wreck your car.
You got to know to do that.
I
mean, we don't know that in the general public.
Nope. And that's why I'm so glad you brought it up so I can mention it, because a clue report is not something that most people even know exists.
How do you spell clue?
CLUE.
Okay.
I don't have a clue.
Don't have a clue.
I don't have a clue.
And that's very helpful to us, because if we have somebody who comes in to buy insurance and they say, no, we've never had a claim, blah, 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 you could have a good lawyer who got you off all the tickets so your driving record's good, but if you've got a bunch of accidents on your clue report, we're going to find that out also. So, not always the Carfax is not always the gospel. You're absolutely right.
Don,
But I know that if you went to trade that car in, if you had repairs done and there was a bad Carfax, they're not going to give you as much money when you take it to them.
No kidding.
Well, that's
Yeah.
something else that we discuss sometime. It's called diminished value.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep,
So if
yep.
you've been involved in an automobile accident and all they want to do is fix your car, the adjuster may not want to hear the words diminished value, but it's a true thing that your car is no longer worth the same as a cherry car that's had no damage to it.
Hey, Don, thanks for that call.
Well, I got one more statement, please.
Yes,
Go ahead.
sir.
I have found in my life, since I've been around a little bit, the only thing worse than a used car salesman is a taxi driver.
Wait a minute. What about politicians?
Oh, no, they're a little bit higher.
They're
No kidding.
higher on the pecking order.
Don, did the dealership make you whole?
No. When I went back there, they we didn't know.
Oh, boy.
But if they did the report, if they did the repairs, they certainly knew, Don.
Yeah. You called a lawsuit. Now you're talking an attorney, and is it worth it?
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
Don, you might want to speak with an attorney on this.
Well, we're talking 8 years ago
Yeah.
now.
Oh,
Yeah.
Then
So much
you
for that.
can't.
Yeah, and not only that, and a lot of people don't realize that, but the state of Florida does have a division to help the consumers that have problems with automobile dealerships. All right.
Well,
So
I'm aware of that, but when they told me no problem and I get a Carfax that says no problem,
Yeah.
I don't even know that the Carfax off my car.
yeah,
Yeah. Hey, Don. Listen. Thanks for bringing up a subject that we haven't talked about, and that clue report, Dan, is a thing that, hey, the consumer that understands what's going on. That's part of our responsibility that we try to do is impart some knowledge. Because in our group, we added it up, not even including Alan Love. We have over 200 years worth of experience in all these different areas. Well, if you draw Alan in, that's like 300 years because he's really old.
pre-Civil War, way back
Pre-Civil
then.
War. He looks like Ulysses Grant died just before he died, but I wouldn't say that.
Well, I thank you, and please don't become an Uber driver.
No.
Hey,
no.
Don, thanks for the call. 340-1590, 340-1590.
Now, speaking of Uber drivers, I was talking to my oldest granddaughter. She goes, yes, she knows some guys who are Uber drivers who use that to meet women.
Scary, isn't it?
That's kind of scary.
Back to money for a
Back to
second.
money,
Even
Jeff.
though we're running out of time here, I figured I might as well talk about one of my more favorite subjects, especially now when I'm worried about the market, because the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100 are up somewhere between 10 and 14% this year, which is wonderful, if it holds. So there's two types of investments that can protect that. One is called an insured investment, which is a whole different subject. But I oftentimes today say, hey, listen, the market's got me worried. Is it going to hold? But on the other hand, real estate has become a very, very, very solid commodity because interest rates are still historically low, and the availability of real estate has become diminished because construction has slowed down. It's having a hard time catching up. So we have what's called REIT, Real Estate Investment Trusts, that are traded, meaning I can buy it today and sell it tomorrow. And the ones that I follow are mortgage trusts, and they are paying around a 10% dividend. And they're 100% liquid, and they pay interest every 3 months.
So I don't have to find a buyer.
Don't have to find a buyer. These trade on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, and I just think these are the greatest places in the world to park your money for a period of time. As long as interest rates stay low and the economy is humming along, these things are a great, great opportunity.
People have to have a place to live.
There you go. 340-1593. Anyway, anybody wants to get information on stuff like that, that's what I do. And I have looked at more and more of my clients right now that are either into these debt instruments that are paying 5 and 6%, which with utilities are extremely conservative, or these REITs that are around 10, which I just think are wonderful, wonderful safeguards now in today's market. Anyway, more information, you call 340-1590, 340-1590, and they will take our phone call, and we'll get back to you, and we're supposed to leave. Say
Bye,
goodbye.
guys.
Onward.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.